I'm smelling bacon. And now I'm smelling something burning. Hmm. Oh! Sam Rockwell's on fire. Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. The latest from director Martin McDonagh, who you might remember directed films like In Bruges and Seven Psychopaths. I have not seen In Bruges, but I have seen Seven Psychopaths. Seven Psychopaths. Try to say that 5 times real fast. But if you've seen either of those prior two films, you know that yes, while they are indeed dark comedies, they are not the sort of raucous, riotous slapstick affair. These are films that the humor just comes natural, they're organic, they're very dry, but they're also bold and uncompromising. They don't have a problem telling stories that feature characters that aren't easy to grasp. And by easy to grasp, I mean they're not the typical thing where you set it up and you're like, okay, I like this character immediately. I'm with them all the way. This is a movie where all the characters do and say pretty horrible things, even the characters you're supposed to sympathize with. And you're left by the very end judging for yourself how do you feel about all these characters. I should probably get into the synopsis on this one. The film involves a woman named Mildred. Her daughter was horribly, brutally raped and murdered, and 7 months go by without a single word into the investigation as to any arrest or anything like that. So when we meet her, she orders three old billboards, and she decides to put raped while dying, still no arrests, how come Chief Willoughby? And this basically starts a complete dumpster fire all throughout her community, and not just with people who sympathize with her. It explodes, and there are tempers on both sides. And what's fascinating about this movie is, now normally in the hands of any other director, they would want the character of Mildred to be totally sympathetic. I love being challenged by movies, especially when it comes to your attitude towards a character. And Mildred is not an easy character to like. On one side, yes, you can sympathize with what's happened to her and her family, but at the same time, she's also very brash, very, very obnoxious. Sometimes she can be extremely unpleasant to be around. But as the film goes on, and you see, yeah, she's doing this out of grief. But then as you find out more about her, and you find out that this may also come from a slight case of guilt, where she feels partially responsible for what landed her daughter at this predicament. It's one of those cases where if I had done this, and you can see this guilt consume her, and everything she does afterwards is just motivated by this rage that nothing has gotten done, and the fact that this community is actually opposing her makes it even worse. And what's even more interesting is that this film goes with, not just with Mildred, but all the characters, you see them in different modes. Now, it would be so easy, once again, to sympathize with Mildred if the chief of police was just a complacent sloth. But Woody Harrelson's performance, combined with the writing, Chief Willoughby is actually a very good man, he sympathizes completely, and he did make an effort into this investigation. But when you've hit a wall and you only have so many resources, because we have to realize, just because you're the chief of police does not mean you're an ace investigator. You can only do so much, and you sympathize with that side as well, particularly when you find out another thing about Chief Willoughby, and that led to a subplot on the other side, which you also can't, it's not easy. This film is not easy. You even have Sam Rockwell's character, who, as unlikable as his character is, particularly when you meet him, and even as it goes on, his character goes through a significant arc that I will say it's a redemptive arc. And I will say I couldn't even begin to realize it was going to go this way. And this film refreshingly goes in routes I just did not anticipate. Frances McDormand's character, Mildred, she does things later on. On one side, yeah, you're raising a fist because you're like, yeah, but at the same time, she does other things in a fit of rage and anger, which you definitely cannot get behind. And you expect, in most of the movies, you're expecting repercussions for that. But then the film very unexpectedly takes another turn that makes it kind of right. Nothing in this film feels wrong. It all feels very appropriate for what happens and also what will happen. The entire time, just I was sitting there rationalizing everything around me. It's like, I can't get behind this, but at the same time, I see where she's coming from. I utterly detest Sam Rockwell's character Dixon. I mean, I want to see him hoist by his own petard, but when you see him and his change of heart, and it doesn't come out of left field. You see that he has the capacity to be a decent person, and it leads to an incredible finish, which, now I will say, one con about this film. It does have an ending, which on one side, the film it's a longer film. It's like 2+ hours. I was going, okay, all right, I can kind of see where this is going now, but then it kind of cuts you off at a certain point. Now, on one side, I love the ambiguity of it. I love endings that leave you to your interpretation of where they're going to go from there, because by that point, you do have such a good understanding of these characters. It could go one way or the other, but at the same time, you are left hanging in some regards, and you don't know if it's satisfying, but at the same time, you do feel that it's a good way to end it. So you're kind of at war with yourself by the time it resolves. And it's all in aid of the fact that I love a film that challenges me on this level. I like walking away from something and still thinking about where it could go from there, but also how I felt about everything I just witnessed. Because none of these characters are 100% evil, but they're also not the best people in the world. You find out that Mildred was not the best mother in the world, but you also can see that she is also a person who has suffered. Even before this murder, she was a person who suffered at the hands of an abusive marriage. So you're at war with yourself, because this is a film that wants to actually portray characters with extremes. You've got Mildred, who is suffering, who is dealing with just unresolved anger, but then on the other side, it's leading her to do things that you just can't condone. You've got Sam Rockwell, who, when you meet him, he's a racist, he's an idiot, he's an absolute bastard. But then, when you see him go where he goes, you're cheering for him. This is the kind of dynamism that is great in a movie like this. And it got me to thinking about the nature of grief and the nature of what we would do. And it even kind of disgusted me to an extent where the community around her, a lot of them are acting like, are you still on this? It's been 7 months. Get over it. Yeah, you know what? You lose a loved one in a decidedly horrible fashion, and see how long it takes for you to get over it. And these are things that was going through my head as I was watching it. I was angry at this community, but at the same time, none of these people can truly understand. And you always have these characters say, I understand what you're going through. Do you? Do you really? You never can. And when something like this happens to a person, you can't ever say you understand, but at the same time, you gotta figure out how you feel about the person's actions afterwards. And that's what this whole film really is about. It's how you react in the wake of horrible tragedy, and even more so when the tragedy sets in. And it's a fascinating character study, and it's definitely right next to Seven Psychopaths. I haven't seen In Bruges, but I can definitely say this director, I love the fact that he's willing to tell stories that aren't going to hold your hand and not going to sugarcoat things for you. So, I suppose in my final rating, it's definitely, on an artistic level, it's probably one of the best films I'm seeing this year. If I did a top 10, it'll probably be in the top 10. Fran McDormand, I hope she gets some Oscar consideration for it. Definitely the main cast. So, in the end, I'm going to give 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri a... Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think this film is wholly unpleasant? Do you think it's a new modern masterpiece? Do you feel that this film reflects the grief that comes from this particular tragedy? Leave it here in the comments below, please. This film is going to spark discussion, and I want discussion. Please discuss down below. And for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click, thou shalt be served.